Hello everyone. This is Dr. Chiranjeevi Manike, Professor and Head of Data Science and Cybersecurity Department, MLR Institute of Technology, Hyderabad. As part of data mining video lecture series, we have completed the 2 units of syllabus. Now we are going to enter into the third unit. So third unit, we have the classification concepts. In this lecture, we are going to discuss what is classification and how does the classification works. So classification is a form of a data analysis that extracts the models describing important data classes. So such models called classifiers predict categorical class labels. Categorical means like a discrete or unordered. For example, we can build a classification model to categorize the bank loan application as either a safe or a risky. Such analysis can help provide us with a better understanding of the data at large. So many classification methods have been proposed by researchers in machine learning, pattern recognition, and statistics. So most algorithms are memory resident, typically assuming a small data set because the main memory we cannot store the more data. So recent data mining research has built on such work and developing a scalable classification and prediction techniques capable of handling the large amounts of disk resident data. And if you see some examples of where the classification could be applied, and this is one simple example to understand where the bank, how the bank loan will be approved with the help of this classification approach. So if a person, if a customer want a bank loan, he has to submit application. He has to fill all the details, mainly mostly like what is the salary, take home salary, monthly salary, and what are the other EMIs he has, and the total amount of the EMIs, and whether he paid the previous loans on time or not, and what is the civil score. Like civil score may not be entered by the customer, but he has to enter the basic details like his PAN card and salaries and how many EMIs he has been paying. Like every information need to be, whatever the information required by the bank need to be submitted. So once the application been submitted by the customers, the bank officers or the bank manager or the concerned officials, they would analyze whether that particular person, the loan could be approved or not. That means the loan is approved or not approved, or yes or no, like such kind of a classification would be done. So here this classification would be done based on the previous the loan applications, how many and what are the profiles of those customers, and whether their application been approved, that is the loan been approved or not. Like, so if whatever the application, newly received application, that will be compared with the existing or the previous records. So based on that, the decision would be made. So similarly, we can also like classify based on the profiles of customers. Like suppose a customer is drawing 1 lakh salary per month, and if you know the shopping habits of that particular customers or tastes or some other features like that, and we would we would classify based on the profiles of like whether the customer is a male or female, whether the customer is drawing more than 50,000 of salary, whether the customer having an independent house, own house or a rented house, or like there are some properties which influence the purchase of a particular product. So that would also be classified based on the customer profiles. We would classify whether the customer is going to buy a product or not. So let us take another example of related to the classification, which is related to the medical field. A medical researcher wants to analyze the breast cancer data to predict which one of the 3 specific treatments a patient should receive. So in that case, so there will be 3 categories. Let us say if there are 3 kinds of treatments. So he will classify the which kind of treatment a particular patient should receive. And there are some other examples of this classification, like email filtering. Like most we whoever are having the email accounts like a Gmail or any other emails, they would receive the mails, and those mails would be filtered and diverted to the either spam or the inbox. So that is whether the email is received email is having a spam or not. So that kind of classification would be done in this emails filtering. Next, image recognition, like classifying an images as containing a specific objects like cars, peoples, or animals. Like, so that kind of task would be done with the classification. Next, a fraud detection, that is identifying a fraudulent transactions or financial statements. Like suppose previously, if based on the previous transactions, like whatever the transaction you have done and the amount and when it was, like based on that, if if you could perform any new transaction, so then that transaction would be classified as like a fraud transactions, or like based on that previous transactions. Next, customer churn prediction, that is predicting whether a customer will stop using a service, when the customer is going to stop the service, why. So that class kind of a classifications would also be done with this. Next, a sentiment analysis, like categorizing the text as a positive, negative, or a neutral. Document classifications, like categorizing documents based on the topic, whether it is a sports related topic, like sports related, or political related, or any other. Next, voice recognition, that is to identify who is speaking based on the voice patterns. And malware detection, that is classifying the files as a malicious or safe. So classification has many applications in various fields, but here we discussed in detail like mainly the three applications. Like one is a bank loan approval, and the second one is whether the customer is going to buy a product or not. Another one is the which treatment should a doctor should recommend to a particular patient if there are three categories of treatments. So among these, if you could observe like a bank loan application, whether the application been approved or not, so there are two categories. And if you coming and the next application is whether the customer purchase a product or not, that is yes or no. It has the two categories. And similarly, this medical diagnosis, if there are three treatments, so which treatment need to be recommended to the particular patient. So there are three, if there are three treatments, so these are categorized as three categories. So these are all the categorical outputs whatever we discussed, but few other classifications would predict. These are the two categories of predictions, like predicting the numerical values and predicting the categorical values. Like suppose yes, no, A or B, like that, approved or not approved, and these are kind of predictions. Whereas some classifications would predict the numeric values, like those are called as these two are the two major types of prediction problems. Like suppose if you could take so how much a particular customer is going to spend in this visit. Like suppose a customer is going to visit a shopping mall coming festival, so then how much he is going to spend, so that amount would be a numeric value, so that could also be predicted. So that's why there are mainly the two types of predictions, that is the numeric predictions and the categorical. And if you look at the general approach to classification, so classification is mainly divided into two steps. The first one is a learning step, and second, classification step. In learning step, a classification model is constructed, and whereas in the classification step, the model is whatever the model we constructed in the step 1 will be used to predict the class labels for given data. So this is an example which I obtained from the Hannon Camber textbook. So the first step is learning, that means training the data. So those are analyzed by a classification algorithm. Here the class label attribute is the loan description, and the learned model or a classifier is represented in the form of a classification rule. So if you observe this data set on the left of this image, so it has the attributes called as a name, age, income, and loan decisions. So under the loan decisions, there are the categories like a risky, safe. There are only the two categories. So, and this classification algorithm will understand by seeing the data, that is from the training data. It will understand the correlation between the attributes, like these are the predictor attributes, like name, age, and income. So these are the attributes, and this is the response variable or the target label. So it will try to understand what is the correlation between the other attributes and the target. So suppose if the loan decision is risky, what could be the income of the customer? What could be the age of a customer and an employee? If the loan decision is safe, and what could be the income of the customer, or what could be the age of a customer? So based on this, it will understand, like the machine learning, as per if you see the definition of machine learning, the machines cannot learn on itself. So we have to teach the machines. So how we teach the machines? We'll teach the machines by supplying the historical data. This is the data, that is we have to teach them, the machines, to understand like the previously submitted applications and their loan decisions. So if you supply this data, it will understand what is the correlation between these attributes and the target label, so that it will remember. That means that information, whatever the correlation between these attributes, that would be remembered in the form of a decision rule or a mathematical equation, or mainly the function. So whenever we supply a new sample in the sense, like suppose these are all the samples, each tuple would be a sample in this case. Whenever we supply a new sample without a target label, let us say the first one, so then we would classify this tuple as like a risky or the safe, based on by comparing the age and the income, etc. So that means here we have to build the equation, or we have to build a classification rule, that like suppose if A is equal to youth, then the loan decision risky. That means there is no need to check any other attributes. And if the income is high, and then the loan decision also would become safe. If age is middle aged and income is low, here in this rule we are going to check the two attributes, right? So then the loan decision would be risky. So the knowledge would be represented in the form of a decision rules, or a function like y is equal to f of x. So x is x. So we'll predict a label, like in this case risky and safe are the label. So we have to supply this x, that means any tuple or in sample, so that we would predict the label. Or we could use this decision rules, classification rules, to predict the label or to classify the sample. So this is the learning. So the machine or the model will learn from the previous data, like how the correlation, like income, loan decision, age, income, loan decision, etc. So that knowledge could be built in terms of this decision rules. Next, the second step is the classification. So here we test the data that are used to estimate the accuracy of the classification rules. So that means the first step, we build a model. So we build a model. So that is learning. The model learn knowledge from the data that we have supplied in the form of training data. Next we have to classify. That is, we can test the data before we deploy the model. Then we have to test the accuracy of the model. Okay, so if the accuracy is considered acceptable, the rules can be applied to the classification of new tuples. So whatever the rules we we find, right, we derived these rules, and these rules need to be checked. The accuracy of these rules or the classification result of this particular model need to be tested. So then if it is okay, then suppose if you are expecting the accuracy like 85% minimum, that means your model should, the accuracy should be more than 85%, more than or equal to 85%. Then that would be acceptable, so that we can deploy that model. So in this we are going to test the accuracy. So we use the separate data to test the accuracy of the model or the classification rules in this example. So here you can see, and this is the test data, and now we are going to view this. We are going to find out a new sample, the target label, like a John Henry, middle-aged and low income group. So then the decision would be risky, right? So this is the way we can find the accuracy of the classification model.